Thursday. An idea that has been put forth by our brother, the Reverend Joseph Nathaniel Cousins, Senior Pastor of Allen Temple, AME Church in Woodstock. We should thank the very fine folk at Woodstock for helping us bring this out every Thursday. Brother Lavender, Reverend Pace, amen. Thank you so much for helping us on this day. I'm filling in for just a moment until Dr. Cousin can get on. But as always, we would like to be able to see what's happening in the various parts of the world before we get into what's going on. And so we start from the youngest and move on up. Stephen Jr., how are things in your neck of the woods?
Think things are well, even though I'm in Connecticut. Shout out to Philly, where my Eagles are 7-0 right now. And the Phillies are playing in the World Series, tied at 2-2. So it's good to be from the Philadelphia sports town, knowing that I got two teams that are doing great. So I'm just happy about that right now.
When they're winning. Okay, amen. Stephen, how things out there with you?
I'm doing okay.
Okay, that's all right. That's rather terse. So we'll just let it go. Phil, how are things with you?
Things are fine. I'm happy to be here.
Okay. Daddy,
Uncle
how
Phil,
you doing?
Uncle Mike, notice how Uncle Phil didn't say his famous catchphrase.
Okay, about the weather?
About how he's being so happy that he can't say it twice, something like that.
Okay.
He don't say that no more. I wonder why.
Yeah, so he's yeah, we won't unpack that right now, as we say in pastoral counseling. Daddy, how you doing?
Doing good. Went to see my cardiologist yesterday. All is well. Don't have to go back until next year.
Well, look at you, looking all sharp in your shirt, your hair is cut, you're doing well. You're looking better than most of us, Daddy. That's a blessing. That's good news. That's always good news. Well, for here in Chapel Hill, we're doing well. And so it's nice. The season's getting ready to start for basketball. And we're just looking forward to having a good day. Now,
Y'all ain't going to do nothing this season, but okay.
Okay, that's at the tail end, but we shall see. Let UConn win a game against a doormat like Boston College, and they think they own the world. So let's move on. That's the babblings of somebody who's misguided over there. Today, we know that we're only a few days out from the midterm election. It seems like there's a lot of stuff going on both sides of the aisle. Getting persons to vote, souls to the polls that we've been doing through the NAACP, and being able to encourage persons to register and to vote. Don't just register, but to vote and to take part. We have some pivotal elections in some battleground states. North Carolina is a battleground state, and we've been working feverishly for the candidate that will serve our interests. And so now, one thing in which we've been told as pastors, that we cannot endorse a particular candidate or party from the pulpit. We are subject to lose our tax exempt status, our government standing. But now we see that we play by these rules, but you have evangelicals at churches in Texas and Oklahoma who are calling it as it is in terms of what candidate they should have, who they should vote, naming them, putting them out there by name. And recently there's a viral clip of one of our pastors, Reverend Jamal Bryant over at New Birth Baptist Church, who really said that we don't need a walker, but the way he was able to phrase it, we need a runner. And he was able to craft it in such a way that really endorsing what's going on. I mean, what is the difference? Why is it that he has the freedom to do that at his, but we're handcuffed in terms of playing by the rules and just, we know, who wants to take a knock at that right quick?
I'll take one swipe because I just tell you, I just would encourage pastors to do what I did for years. And I would stand in the pulpit and I would say, I know I cannot tell you how to vote because that is not in keeping with the law. But there is nothing wrong with me telling you how I am going to vote. And I would tell them how I'm going to vote I would call the candidates by name. I would name the races. And I would say, I'm not telling you how to vote. I'm just telling you how I'm going to vote, because I want to see what will happen in the best interest of Black and brown people. You know, I'm like the Apostle Paul when it comes to electing my candidates. You know, salvation is for everyone, but I declare, Paul said, for the Jew first, then also to the Greek. And so for me, the election results are for everyone, but for me, for Black folk first, then everybody else. So that is how I would do it.
Okay, anyone else?
I think that for us, I find it amazing where you see other people in their pulpits actually bringing their preferred candidates in the pulpit, raising their hand, and you have those pastors telling them, this is who we're voting for, this is our candidate, and you got the congregation, you know, standing with an ovation and, you know, supporting that particular candidate. But in the Black church in general, especially for the AME church, yeah, we could say, I can't tell you who to vote for, but this is who I'm voting for. We're still curtailing the issue. I don't know. Is it that we're still afraid of what may happen to us, where, you know, we know that we're not like our counterparts, where, you know, they're not afraid of losing their tax exempt status so readily, but we're thinking that we could make one misstep according to their eyes and we could lose everything. Is that really the reason?
Yeah, you got to remember, when you look at the law, not the way it's crafted, but the way it's enforced. The law is always enforced to the letter against people of color. And that's the fear. The other folk can get away with anything. But for us, the absolute letter of the law is always enforced. That's why if you were on a highway right now, Steve, and you were doing 75 miles an hour, and folk were passing you like you were looking for a forward gear, a trooper would be more likely to pull you than to pull somebody else out there.
So, Dan, what do you think about that?
Part of our problem is the condition we are in is that we are supposedly a denomination that is comprised of a number of churches under one kind of following. So we have a denomination, we have a name, Lutheran, Episcopalian, whatever, and that makes it easier, so they say, to put the tax problem on the denomination than on the local church. The evangelicals who out there who have already applied for no tax status, and they are not listed like the denominational churches are listed, and so they have far more leeway in letting the law pass right by them than we do. Because if what happens in an AME church one place, they take the whole denomination.
Mm-hmm.
But like you got the church of fire, Able one church of fire. So they ain't gonna hardly worry about that one church of fire. But what is our problem, our difficulty comes when we have lost our desire to be active. I listened to all. I always said every time there was an election, I cannot tell you how to vote, but I would always tell them how I'm going to vote and urge them to vote. And if you had the faith in your pastor, listen to what your pastor says. I did that all the time. Did that as a bishop. I cannot tell you how to vote, but I can only tell you who I am voting and who I'm supporting. Now, if you want to know who I'm supporting, who I'm voting for, here it is. I did that with Obama. So now it can happen. That's our way out of it. Don't be afraid of tax exempt status. There are a number of ways they cannot take you to tax exempt status or tax you for your own opinion. That's your right. That's your opinion. But you can't say the AME church is doing this, because then they take the whole denomination and classify you as part of an institution that is able to be taxed.
Let
And
me
lose
I
their
was gonna
tax
ask this question. Let me ask this question. Given where we are with our democracy, where you have candidates that are running on the platform of election deniers, and how they actually support their insurrection of January 6th. What's happening in Pennsylvania between Oz and Fetterman, how that's a toss-up, and in Georgia between Warnock and Walker. Given the delicacy and the sensitivity of our democracy where we are, should we not have a louder voice, given that our principles are at stake in terms of what could happen on Tuesday?
Well, I think that to add to this, I think that we have to take it upon ourselves to teach our people, as well as to be the examples for some of our colleagues, that it is possible to have an opinion and to be, because you have persons that like to tell you politics has no place in the church. I'm sure you all have passed the churches like that. Say just preach Jesus and nothing else. Leave politics out of the church, when it has been through the church that we've been able to make social change. Here's the thing of listening to this whole discussion. How do you address those voices of those persons that would tell you, Reverend, that's fine, but we didn't come to church this morning to hear that? In terms of with the social aspect, as Rauschenbusch would say, social gospel, which is really redundant because the gospel is social. So who Steve, you haven't said anything, Big Steve?
Well, just tell them to go to Bible study. If you want to get down on the word, go to Bible study. If they say they ain't getting down on Sunday, go to Bible study. We have several.
I mean, I just find it, ironic that the AME church was founded upon us not really, our issues were not being addressed. When we were at St. George's, where our things are affecting us was not actually being highlighted. And we were really birthed out of that movement where we really wanted to talk about issues that really affected us directly. And now here we are, we're essentially saying that no longer matters to us. Just preach Jesus and just preach Bible, and let go of what happened to you throughout the week, where the worst thing I can hear is we caught hell all week long, and all that I want to hear on Sunday is grace. And I'm like, well, let's go into why you caught hell. Let's really highlight what you're really facing and experiencing, and seeing how we can overcome it. I think that for a lot of our churches now, they look at church as an escape. They don't want to know about politics. They don't want to know about, what's happening, in their communities. They just want to actually just get away from it all. That's like an hour or two of them just to clear their head, clear their mind before they actually enter the quote unquote real world once service is over. And with everything happening for us now, how we are going back. We saw what the Supreme Court did for Roe v. Wade. Now we see them taking up affirmative action and other issues that are going to come down the pipeline. We see candidates that are election deniers have legitimate chance of taking over both the House and the Senate. And yet we're going to continue to say that politics do not play a part in the church, that we should not have a say. That's where we really are losing that battle, because where is the voice going to come from? Is it going to come from the Urban League? Is it going to come from the NAACP? Is it going to come from fraternities and sororities? I believe right now the church has lost its social limb, its arm. That's what we're actually embedded. That was in our DNA. And I feel like now we're trying to be something that who we're not, but that's how we get people inside the church now, which is insane to me.
Well, wasn't it Karl Barth that said that when you preach with the Bible in one hand and a newspaper in the other? in terms of having some social activism. I think people forget that Karl Barth didn't look like us.
Yeah, we haven't lost the arm, Steve, as much as we have denied it.
Mhm.
And we have allowed the general mood of the populace we serve to craft how we present the gospel. And that's sad, because they are there to hear it, not craft how it is presented. But we have many officers in our local churches there who are the very ones telling pastors they're too political, that you can't have the politics in church. That's not anything coming from the grassroots. That's coming from the leadership. And they want to craft and control the presentation of the gospel. And it was the same with Jesus. Many of the Pharisees and Sadducees didn't mind the good news as much as they wanted it crafted to include them and them only. As long as you give deference to us and our position of respect and authority in the community, then Jesus, maybe if you would just go along to get along, everything would be all right. And Jesus wouldn't have that. He wouldn't have any part of that. He called them on it. And we have to have more pastors who will call leadership in congregations on trying to control something as central as the absolute necessity and importance of voting.
So, I mean, with this, I've often heard the predecessor to Dexter Baptist Church, Vernon Johns, was a very social active person who went against the system in Montgomery. And they ran him out of town, thinking they would get someone who would be more in terms of the education that they could control. And they were able to get a young man out of Boston University by the name of Martin Luther King Jr. So I think that we see that there has been activism, but we've got caught up in the whirlwind of prosperity preaching, and we've lost that social aspect, that savor. What do you say about that, Daddy?
The problem is the cultural change that we thought was going to take place has been a cover to starting with I don't know what generation it was before, Generation X or Generation Y or Millennium, but they still keep thinking they can break the glass ceiling, which keeps them or from becoming a real part of the cultural flow in this country. And we get satisfied so quickly and so easily. And so unfortunately, what has happened to many of our churches, they have become not places of spiritual satisfaction, but places of entertainment satisfaction.
Yeah.
And where you look now, when I was coming along, the highest priced staff member surely was not the choir director. It was the janitorial system. Now, what is the highest salary part other than the clergy staff in your church? It happens to be that which deals with the part which they call makes them feel good, the entertainment part, the music. Now that's where we are, and that's bad. That's holding us captive to so much. I cringe when I see what was happening to so many of us, and see how we are drifting away from what kept us as a forerunner for justice and freedom. When we stop becoming advocates in a very large way for social justice, for equality, for voting rights, and we were a major part of the NAACP. We were a major part in all of the community organizations, which every community had one, where that was the only place we could had the format where we could do it. where we have not allowed our churches to become, as they were, the center post for discussing, preparing, analyzing, and calling forth that which will make our society, and especially our community, better, more prosperous, and worthwhile. Now we talk about the voting. We see what the voting is going to do. If we don't vote, there was a very important analysis made last night. They read an ad that Jesse Helms had up when he was running for Senate from North Carolina, Michael. And it was so based and so biased. There was no doubt that he was talking about white folk only. Now, do you know what they compared that with? The new ads that Stephen Miller, a graduate of Duke University, is putting up, which saying the same thing. Now, here we are from 1960 something to 2022, and we have not changed the same language. Where have we gone? From Jesse Helms to Stephen Miller, all in North Carolina. Now that, Jesse Helms was one of the worst that happened. Stephen Miller is one of the worst that ever served with Trump. And now his ads, you'll see them in your state, Mike. You'll see them. His ads are coming up about white racists now. That we're now making racism white. How in the devil, so backwards. But all it is saying the same thing that Jesse Helms is saying, and we are not doing it because they're trying to kill that Supreme Court justice who's running for Senate. God bless her, but I think her knees have been kneecapped by Stephen Miller and all them rough folk down in the eastern part of North Carolina, and it's tough. But we have not allowed the spirit of liberation and justice and freedom to stay alive in us. We have let that spirit go down thinking we have arrived. And we have not arrived at all.
But Joe, let's get you in on it. Welcome, Joe. Glad to see you. Speaking about the midterms and in terms of the aspect of the preacher, it is now disappearing of preaching with the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other. We're just getting up there and saying something, but not really talking about the issues, the social issues that affect us in the community, especially with the midterms coming up. What's your thought on that? You're in a battleground state. You're in a heavy state. Matter of fact, you're in a red county. So tell us, in terms of your position.
It's hard to be in a battleground state in a red county. And I see Steve Jr. smirking. Let me tell you why he's smirking. Because he knows the demographics of where my county is. And the difficult part is, there are people out here that look like us, but don't necessarily vote in the way that we traditionally vote. But yet and still, I have to say what I have to say. And what I come to say for years, what I always tell people is, I have no problem telling them how I'm going to vote. If they need to know, I'm not scared to do that. I'll let you know the way I think, things ought to go. But even if you disagree with me, I still encourage you to get out and vote. Even if I don't like the way you vote, anybody that looks like me, even if you don't vote like me, I still want you to go vote, because I don't want anybody to overlook that fundamental right that we have to vote. But in terms of talking about the issues, it's hard because, you would think that someone that looks like you shares your same sentiments and struggles and things of that nature, but oftentimes they don't.
Now, with this going on, we're going to shift gears for a moment. We talked about the midterms now, but the recent news of that we heard about the killing of one of the members of the group Migos takeoff in Houston early in the morning at a dice game. That's what the media is painting it as. He was not involved in it, but gun violence. Recently, we had Coach Deion Sanders, who is now doing a phenomenal job at Jackson State University. Let me just say this. Deion Sanders played football at Florida State, but he's a graduate of Talladega College. So he is an HBCU grad. So now with his success that he's having with his football team, with his son, and reaching top recruits, now you have persons that are saying, is it a moment or a movement in terms of what he is doing on the landscape? And now there's schools that are actually whispering his name of being a viable candidate at some of those vacancies, such as Auburn. And they've even whispered his name as far as Nebraska. Stephen A. Smith of ESPN has really lambasted Florida State for not even considering him when the job was open. So I am of the opinion that this is not a moment, but a movement that he has really exposed the disparities in terms of facilities, in terms of access. Here in Chapel Hill, I see the golf team traveling far better than the football team of Alabama State. So, I mean, it's a, what do you all have to say about that? Is it a moment or is it a movement?
The danger comes, Michael, if Deion goes to one of the big 5 schools that they're talking about, that's going to drain the pool of Black athletes who would go to HBCU. And it put us right back where we were. The sacrifice is only going to become a reality of goodness when the HBCUs can deal with and overcome and beat some of the big 5 colleges. I can remember when Florida A&M beat University of Miami.
Yeah.
It wasn't no fluke. But what happened? Miami started then recruiting all of the Black folk who were good and went to Florida A&M. And the next time they met, they killed Florida A&M. Now, if Deion goes to an leaves rather, a historical Black college and goes to a big 5, what's going to happen to the stature of the HBCUs who struggle to keep football and all athletic programs alive? Is how much of a sacrifice is he going to be asked to pay? Will there be other persons who did as he did and turned down several offers and went to Jackson State and made something of it? Can they do it at Tennessee State? Can they do it at Prairie View? Can they do it at Alcorn? Can they do it at all the places where they are taking recruits who would have gone there to the big 5 schools? What would happen if the SWAC conference would really become a SWAC and the CIAA could really become conferences comparable to the SEC and the Big Ten? It can happen. It will not happen if they take Deion Sanders and put him in the Big 5. It'll be a promotion. It'll look like a big glimmer, but over the years, we'll be right back where we were before he started. It's a challenge. It's a sacrifice.
It's just like Daddy said. The challenge is to avoid the moment that can kill a movement. This can be a movement, but a moment like an offer to another level. can kill the whole movement. Our prayer ought to be that there not be a moment that can kill an entire movement, because that's what this culture has done historically to Black folk. They will offer those who are leading movements a moment. And if they accept that moment, the movement subsides, if not just dies outright.
Here's what I would say to that, I look at it from two perspectives. When Deion first came to Jackson State, he highlighted the lack of resources, even as far as not willing to put the names of the players on the back of their jerseys. And he brought that up, saying that, your parents came out to watch you, and the least we can do is, put their name on the back of the jersey. He highlighted the disparities within their facilities in terms of the weight room and the practice field. Stevie. In terms of even now Jackson State actually building a new stadium with new facilities.
Possibly.
I know they're talking about that, but he also went on 60 Minutes and talked about how his assistant coaches are being underpaid compared to what their counterparts are receiving. So you're really looking at a lack of resources, but also I look at it from this standpoint is we always seem to treat our Black colleges and institutions or even Black businesses as a safety net or an insurance policy where, hey, it was Jackson State that gave him his real first true coaching, head coaching job, as opposed to the other Power 5 conferences. And going back to North Carolina, Uncle Mike, the professor over the 1619 project, where she was denied tenure, but she landed at Howard University, where because she was denied tenure at UNC, she was able to go to Howard as like a fallback, so to speak. So our Black colleges are always there, but until we actually treat them, give them the resources that they're seeking. All right, that way they can actually compete. But the resources aren't there, then I don't know how you're really able to make that argument. But also, as us, we gotta stop treating our institutions as like a stop on to something else. Or if this doesn't work out for us, I can always fall back to this school where I know they'll openly embrace me.
You could speak about this issue that in terms of talent, one of the greatest running backs of the era, two of them, Gale Sayers and Walter Payton from HBCUs. One of the receivers, Jerry Rice, Mississippi Valley State University.
Yeah, probably the greatest receiver, Mike.
The greatest receiver, even one of the first to win the Super Bowl, Doug Williams, Grambling. So I think we as a people, it's incumbent upon us to support our own.
Mike,
we do not have inferior institutions. Yes.
Where did Warren Moon go to college, Mike?
Warren Moon, I think, came out of University of Washington.
Oh, it wasn't HBCU.
Okay. It was HBCU. See, the thing is, we got to know their history and ours as well. And so, as Du Bois would say, we become schizophrenic, intellectually, educationally schizophrenic. Yeah, Phil.
No, I was going to say, Mike, one interesting point of what you're saying among all the interesting things you just said is that the irony is this larger culture, the white culture, doesn't understand that they're doing us a kind of a favor by forcing us back into HBCU environment, because there is a larger mechanism driving this culture, and that is if enough super talented players return to and reside within HBCU, the HBCU system, that's going to force advertisers. And if you notice now, what we're seeing now in a very slow trend is suddenly you're seeing HBCU games on major networks now.
Yes.
And that's something that will only continue as this trend continues. The irony is the very ones against the movement can be drivers of the movement because they will in their obsession with economics, go after and put the dollars where the players are.
You know,
And that can happen.
with that point, we just recently, you know, there was 67,000 people at Legion Field this past Saturday for the Manchester City Classic between Alabama State and Alabama A&M. And one of the players for Alabama State, he was a transfer from one of the P5 conferences. And he said he never knew it was like that. The energy, the competition. He said he had been missing out, that he was fortunate. He feels fortunate to be a part of that. This past weekend as well, it was homecoming for Carolina. It was homecoming for North Carolina A&T. Between the two, you could not tell if it's homecoming here. You know, you see the people going to the game, eating their you know, vegetables and, you know, all the Carolina blue, walk to the stadium. But at North Carolina A&T, they call it the greatest homecoming on earth. And it's a week-long thing. And day parties, I mean, who would have thought a day party?
Day party.
But from that, I can say this about North Carolina A&T. I have a member, he is part of the board, and it is part of their plan that they've taken that energy and tapped into those grads from corporations and other places, that they've been able to lift it and give it exposure. I was surprised when I went to that campus and what I saw going on in terms of the achievements, and it's not just on the field, but in the classrooms. This week is Central's homecoming. Mm-hmm. And you better believe they got stuff going on, and you know, so it's an electricity. So I think that what Coach Sanders has done, he's exposed the inequities, but he's also exposed the camaraderie, and he's exposed the experience as something that's life-changing for a lot of people who are graduates of HBCU institutions.
You know, Mike, though, the system is just stacked. Like I say, it's stacked. I mean, This week, Mike Krzyzewski, the former Duke basketball coach, signed an outrageous contract with XM Radio.
Yeah. And
He's gonna continue to make more money, and never have to sit on a bench again.
And one thing I could say, you know, shout out to my sister-in-law who went to that school over there, Tuskegee. She got to mention that school. I don't need to hear about that. But one thing I could say about, I do not necessarily cheer for that team at Duke, but when it was out in terms of Black Lives Matter, he did come out with a statement. But the thing that really got my attention about him was when the national team for the Olympics and for the national anthem that they would play after they would win was not the traditional, but it was the rendition that Marvin Gaye did. And he said it's time that we start embracing, you know, culture. And that really, I said, you know, I was like, you know, I you know, being in Chapel Hill, like, ooh, you know, you spit fire at that man, but then to hear somebody to say something like that and to realize, but he did it in such a way, he knew where his talent was coming from and how he had to relate. Doesn't necessarily say that he's the most liberal person, but he started to get it. Remember, Duke did not even want to transfer. I mean, they one and dones were out of the question.
Yeah.
But how did he build that? How did he infuse success? You know, they started raiding everybody. And, you know, it's amazing to see how they could flip the switch. I think we as a people need to see the talent as well as the diversity and you know, the blessings of embracing our institutions. And I think Daddy can relate to this. I think it was in the 40s, in the 40s or the early, I think it was in the 50s. There was a secret match, a secret scrimmage between Duke and North Carolina Central. Duke went over and they got blown out.
Yep.
blown.
That's what
out.
that's when Sam Jones who would play for the Celtics, and so and Central had some real strong players. That's before the NBA started taking a look at black basketball at HBCUs. Yes.
And blew them out of the gym. So I think now we see, getting your point, Phil, about ESPN and others now with the NILs that are going around, and they're seeing that the appeal that's there. Joe, you went to Hampton. Speak about it. Let me hear you.
Which aspect in particular, Mike?
In terms of Deion Sanders, and is it a moment or a movement? Now your school has left the MEAC and gone to the Big South or something like that?
My school left the CIAA, went to the MEAC, left the MEAC, went to the Big South. Now we're not in the Big South anymore either, Mike.
You're in the Colonial.
I think we're in the Colonial now. So, I mean, part of it for Hampton is we're an HBCU, but it's an HBCU where the former president always wanted to really push more diversity in that. And oftentimes not always in line with what the alumni, wanted. The alumni, I think, oftentimes wanted to be more straight line HBCU, but nevertheless, we are an HBCU, proud HBCU, and I hope it is a movement and not a moment. I pray this is what it is, but it's hard because, and we don't oftentimes do enough to promote our HBCUs, and we're not second-class citizens. Some of your most successful people you'll find anywhere were graduates of HBCU. We need to get that across to our students. And I tell you what, the HBCU experience taught me more about myself than any other place could teach me. And Michael, he not gonna tell the story on air, but he laughs at the transformation from my heading off to college until he saw me again at Thanksgiving break. And he said, from the time I graduated high school to Thanksgiving break, he said I was a completely different person.
It was so I think that with that, with my school, if you look at the baseball team, it's not black.
Ours is the tennis team.
Yeah. The tennis team is white. We have a golf team.
Yeah.
And a soccer team. And you got girls as far as coming from California, and I think one even came from Scotland, playing for and this is not just with the school that I attended, but with various schools in terms of the makeup of the student body. And so
here's the question I have for you, Mike, and for everybody else. And Dad, you're HBCU grad, jump in this too. At what point does diversity or bringing in, I'm not like Clarence Thomas, I do know what diversity looks like, but at what point does diversity and bringing in not even white people, but non-black people to HBCUs, at what point then do we cease to be an HBCU, or does it really matter who we bring in will always be an HBCU?
As long as we keep what we were originally chartered for, as long as we don't lose what you have our focus and maintain why we got started and how we got where we are, diversity would not be a problem. Diversity becomes a problem when you lose your focus, when you lose what you're about, and you begin to allow the culture to change who you are and what you are. So I have no problem with diversity. Just don't forget who you are. Just the school is the one thing I like about Talladega. Talladega never did lose the fact that it was basically academic. It never did go in for any athletics. I had a scholarship there, and I refused to go because it didn't have no athletics. But it still is the same. Talladega is still the same, still very strong academically. So diversity is not going to hurt you if you don't. It will help you grow as long as you don't change who you are and what you are.
And Dad, you brought up a good point, because truthfully, at least for me, Mike, and you too, Dad, my connection to my school really doesn't have a lot to do with athletics. Like, I'm not really checking on the football team each week and the basketball team each week and stuff like you would do, like Steve who went to UConn or something like that. It's not really a tie to athletics for me. My tie to the school is just my experience at the school, the friends I made with the school. My athletic affiliation is University of North Carolina Tar Heels because I was born in even though I was born in Duke Hospital, Steve, I was, but still, University of North Carolina Tar Heels. That's my athletic affiliation. But my school, I'm affiliated with them just because I love the school, I love the people, I love the connections I made. I love the fact that when you are a graduate of an HBCU, it's almost like you're in another fraternity or sorority from other HBCU grads because you have so much in common with each other. I mean, there's so many great things that go on as a result of finishing, an HBCU, in my opinion.
I would just say, for a person who attended what we call a PWI, UConn, what I loved, I remember first day of our orientation, the president of the university highlighted that this was the most diverse class in the history of the school at a whopping 14%.
I'm about to say about three of y'all in there.
that was everybody, throw it in there.
Steve, and real talk, how many of that 14% were athletes?
I was about 90%, real about 90, but it was only, for UConn, for an enrollment of 25,000 people, only about 500 were African American. Yeah. And we, most of us knew each other because of our affiliation with the African American Cultural Center. At least we had that. So, we talk about, diversity. Yeah. When it's diverse for them, for UConn, it was 14%. But there are plenty of times where I may be like the only Black person in my classes. Maybe two or three of us in a room of 100 students, especially my first and second year. So, it just depends on the perspective, what you qualify as diverse.
Well, if you look at diversity, getting back to Jackson State, the head drum major for Jackson State's band, the Sonic Boom, is Hispanic. And he's the first person from his family to go to college. And one of the dancers, the J-Sets, Hispanic. If you look at Paul Quinn in Texas, they have a rising number of Hispanic students that are beginning to attend. And to talk about diversity, you even have Hispanic fraternities and sororities that are being formed and strolling, you used to call it stepping, strolling at various schools and growing because they're using the same template that we used in terms of having things that they can identify and in which they can be able to help them understand their culture, as well as to be something of a safety net for them culture.
I know the hour's late. I know we're almost at time, but I want to get this, at least get it out there. Maybe we can discuss it, next week or in the weeks to come. But I followed a story that occurred out in the California legislature, where there was a group of persons got together, state reps, city council, what have you. They will look at redistricting and really trying to put the Hispanic more in power as opposed to the African-American districts, and trying to rework it. And some language was used in that meeting that was secretly recorded about how they felt about African-Americans and how they looked at, even their own Hispanic community, and even said, like, we don't even know where they're from because they're too dark-skinned and they're ugly monkeys. So in terms of building political power, as African Americans, if we don't have the Hispanic population, where do we go to build coalition or to build power if, in order for us to actually make some serious gains in this country, where does African Americans turn to, given that we are considered a minority in this country? Who can we hook up with to make sure we get our agenda across?
But I think that's something we can talk about next week after the midterms. And hopefully we can see. Now, you know, hope is not lost because they thought Donald Trump wouldn't do nothing. And they had already given it to Hillary, but we saw something completely different. And especially dealing with the recent election in terms of the referendum in Kansas about Roe versus Wade.
Can you see, Mike, the fact that, and those of us, and I probably said it, and everybody on this call probably said it, well, you know, he ain't gonna be in there but 4 years. What damage can he do in 4 years? Remember, Steve Jr., you and I've had this conversation many times. What can he do in 4 years? Man, in 4 years, look at the shape and the future and the generational influence of the Supreme Court.
I never said what he could do, like he can't do it but in 4 years. I always said, they'll ask a man person could do a lot in 4 years. And people just try to wave it off. I knew how serious it was. But everybody said, don't worry about it. He'll be just fine. He's just a passing fad. No, but that's what happens when you don't take things serious.
And, and he's coming, and he's trying to come back again. But the problem is going to be, we can talk about this another day. The interesting thing is going to be how he's going to reconcile with DeSantis when the time comes, because that's going to be interesting to watch, because they're going to go at each other in any sort of primary.
So you gotta, as you're gonna say, you gotta look at this like Smokey the Bear. Smokey the Bear had a commercial used to say, it takes a lifetime to grow a forest, minutes to burn it down. That's Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Well, the time has come. We got to close out, and we get with some closing comments. It's like, Daddy, where is he going?
Dad, take your camera off, Dad.
Take your camera off, Daddy. Take your camera off. And so
how I take the camera off?
Oh, okay. Let's just take the camera off, Papa. If you could just, I guess, just close it. Just close it.
There it is.
There you go. And we're just we feel it may be falling on you in terms of the prayer when Daddy, if Daddy doesn't able to return. So we start with the youngest and head on up to Phil. Go ahead, Stephen Jr. Let's hear what you got to say.
Nah, life is grand. We got, UConn basketball season coming up, so looking forward to that.
Where they ranked? For another. Where they ranked? I'm curious.
Don't.
I haven't seen them. I don't look at the top 50 rankings. I look at the top 25. I haven't seen them in that.
Do not care. And just know that it's going to happen. It's going to be our season. It's going to be our year. Steve. So what you want? November 11th, you got Wakanda Forever. Know what I mean? So, hey, go check it out. You got churches right now already written out, movie theaters, for opening night. Just let you know, it's all good for the Black culture right now.
What about the Beehive? What about Boulevard the Beehive?
I did notice that on Apple Music that Beyonce's new album Renaissance is now required part of essential listening right now. Her album did make the cut. Just want to put that out there. But just all good for the Black culture. Shout out to all the HBCUs.
So Jeezy doesn't have a new album coming out or anything, Steve? Jeezy ain't got nothing new. Gucci Mane, nothing like that for you? Nothing?
No, I think we banned Kanye right now. I don't know where we are. The delegation's still out, with Gay. And,
Joe, let him finish, please, Joe.
I gotta mess with it.
Thank you, Stephen Jr. Thank you. Joe, come on, Joe.
Just everybody go out and vote. And shout out, I think y'all probably talked about it before I got here, but shout out to our friend who's been a friend of our family and close personal friend of ours for years, Dr. Jamal Harrison Bryant, for what he said. And yes, I say this from wholeheartedly, Georgia, we need a runner, not a walker. Please do the right thing when you go into that ballot box. Do the right thing. Make history. Elect the first African-American woman governor, and elect a runner, not a walker. And let's keep this thing going and do what God would have to do for our people.
Steve?
I would just like to say, if the political pundits and pollsters would stay out of the process, just shut up. I think we could have a decent election. But they put so much emphasis on the wrong stuff to the point where it just makes me sick. It is shifted from the issue of Roe v. Wade to the economy and inflation and all this kind of stuff. So it's ridiculous. I'm just watching it fall apart in bits and pieces. because on CNN and the rest, they just can't shut up. Just shut up. I'm done.
All right. Well, for me, thank you everybody. Those who watched, Burma Lomax, thank you so much, brother Brandon Owens. Thank you so much. To my friend Theo down there in Georgia, thank you so much for watching. To Nicole, sister in love, thank you so much. And she had to shout out her school, Tuskegee. Yeah. So thank you so much for that. For here, just continue, just vote. I voted, and continue the membership to do same, and just continue to support one another, and most of all with the weather, it's a great day to be a Tar Heel. And so
Always.
just thankful. Always. Phil, I don't see Daddy coming back, so if you close us out.
All right, as always, I want to begin by saying I want to thank Dr. Joseph Cousin and the very fine people of Allen Temple, Brother
Yes.
Lavender, Reverend Sandra Pace, for assisting us with this platform. I want to thank my brothers and my nephew, and certainly my father, for the wonderful contributions that you all make to what can be a very lively discussion. To my brother Stephen's point, I want to say that while they've shifted, he's absolutely right. While they've shifted away from Roe v. Wade and its reversal to the economy, do people remember that under Trump, in his last days, and especially in Texas, that there were long bread lines, cars lined up to get food?
Yeah.
And they're talking about the economy.
Right.
There haven't been any bread lines like that under President Joe Biden. And to my nephew, Steve Jr.'s point, which was a very, very salient point about who do Black people look for to build coalitions post this election. Well, first of all, we better look to each other, because we had to get our own act together, and we aren't together as a people. We need to coalesce. We need to come together ourselves and recognize that across the spectrum, liberal to conservative, we have got to share a common agenda that moves Black people forward, because there is a common agenda out there that is designed to set Black people back. And as I would pray us out, Lord, I pray blessings upon my family, those in this circle, upon their ministries, upon their aspirations, especially Dr. Joseph Nathaniel Cousin Sr., as he aspires to become one of the Episcopal leaders of the church. Thank you, God, for blessing and keeping our mother and father, Steve Jr.'s grandmother and grandfather. You have blessed them, Lord. You know, your word declares, with long life will you satisfy those who serve you, and you will show them your salvation. We thank you, for surely they have seen it. Now continue to bless and keep us this day is our prayer. Our going out, our coming in, our down sitting, and our uprising. And make us mindful in everything as we try to take the credit to give your name the glory. And I'm going to end this prayer right now and allow our Father to finish the prayer and have his remarks and pray us out. Come on back in, Daddy. Unmute. You got to unmute.
Yeah, I'm mute. Okay.
Okay.
I appreciate the discussion, and it has been very, very meaningful. My hope and my prayer is that we don't lose the fire. In 1900, I think it was about 85, when I was president of the National Council, there was a conference held with the media. And we were told then that in the next few years, our authority, our guidance, and all that we did was going to come from the media, going to come through the media. We said no, because we were so used to Walter Cronkite saying one thing and that was it. But lo and behold, we see now.
Yep.
And I agree. The media now determines what the authority is and what the rules will be and how it will be determined. If they would, as Stephen say, just keep quiet for a while and not just always ask and determine what's going to happen, people believe that. I did not believe that man when he said it, but I see now it is a reality. the media, the networks control the authority and the direction in which the nation now moves.
That's right.
Lord, give us strength. Lord, give us grace. Give us the fire still in our spirits so that we never lose our desire to become liberated, activated, free, just, and revived. In your name, amen.
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 Amen.